Daniel Mael here with another episode of the Mael Time podcast. Just want to give a shout out to everyone who's been contributing so much to Unit 11741 and making sure that we can help as many soldiers as possible. It's still a huge problem that of the lack of equipment or unsafe equipment, and without generous support, we couldn't do it. I want to take some time today just to highlight the report that came out over the weekend from Omri Maniv of Channel 12. He put out a tweet thread, and also I believe it was put out on Israeli media, and I just want to go through these tweets so people understand exactly what he's talking about. So he says, and I'm going to read the translation here. So, exclusive counterintelligence officer S from 8200 was the first to warn that Hamas was about to invade. This happened on July 10th, 2023, after she watched a Hamas training exercise. So someone from 8200, Israel's most advanced intelligence unit, actually saw Hamas training on July 10th, 2023, and reported it. She wrote a shocking report that went to the intelligence officers of the Southern Command and the Gaza Division. Then she sat down to analyze the findings with counterintelligence officer F, who began sending a series of warning emails herself. So these were actually put on official documents and put into circulation within the unit. And they actually include pictures of these emails, so they're verified to exist. The title of the report by the officer S alone should have made everyone jump. Quote, characterization using extensive technological means of training, a broad raid on the territory of the country. She writes, quote, a training exercise was held with large forces and in the presence of senior officials on a viewing platform in Khan Yunis. So there's actually senior officials watching the Hamas fighters train. I'm not sure exactly who they were, but they're definitely senior officials watching the regular terrorists train to prepare to invade Israel. The scenario that was practiced was largely based on the plan to break the Gaza Division's defense system. This is in the open and reported by 8200. So, of course, after October 7th, everyone said from an intelligence perspective, how did Israel not know? They did know. And there are people that saw this and reported it. The third tweet, she explains what the training consisted of, one-on-one, October 7th. Quote, a powerful TAM fire strike creating gaps in the obstacle, crossing mounted on jeeps, violently storming the target, taking hostages, going on the attack to prevent the enemy from regaining control of the target. So exactly what happened on October 7th was witnessed by an intelligence officer from 8200. She also emphasizes additional contexts that indicate a serious intention to carry out a raid. Quote, during the training, extensive and consistent use of Islamic content in terms of an offensive context were identified. Identifying this content makes it possible to understand the enemy in terms of motivation and conduct. So these are radical Islamist terrorists that are practicing, presumably screaming Allahu Akbar and saying that they're doing this as a holy war. As we know, the Al-Aqsa flood, or the flood going towards the Temple Mount, was what they were deemed the raid on October 7th. So this was seen before. Then she writes, quote, conducting raid training on Israeli territory indicates that the Jericho Wall plan is not a plan on paper. Jericho Wall, of course, was the plan that was obtained in 2022, I believe, which detailed October 7th, and nothing happened on the Israeli side. This is Hamas's way of advancing its level of readiness for a day of command. They also practice realistic scenarios that include casualties, including in their own ranks, and not just show-off scenarios. So they're actually practicing when the IDF responds and kills terrorists, how they're going to evacuate them. Very extensive training. The last sentence of the counter-argument from 8200 is the most shocking of all. Quote, the content of the training could raise a significant change in perception on the enemy side that is reminiscent to some extent of significant historical events in the past of the State of Israel. This also does not cause anyone in the defense, end quote. Of course, this did not cause anyone in the defense establishment to act differently, which is certifiably insane. And it was known, it was seen, and nothing changed on the border. I've met with a number of soldiers who were actually on the border that day, and they had no idea. They'd never been made aware of this. And even after the phone call from Ronen Bar, Herzia Levy, Yaron Finkelman, when they sent down the Tequila Squad on October 7th, the guys who were actually on the border had no clue that was underway. So there was people that were sent because they identified a problem, but they never actually told the soldiers who were on the border. Continues, the Gaza division under Nimrod Aloni did not settle for warnings, but began preparing for a Hamas raid as part of the, quote, Palestinian Fields Plan, the details of which are revealing. These positions are being set up near the fence at a cost of millions. If even the slightest intelligence arrives, the fighters are sent to ambushes under the pretext of, quote, unquote, reading and burning in camouflage positions. So Nimrod Aloni did actually do something, and he was making sure that there was a way to counter this. When Aloni was replaced, no additional positions were built, and the existing ones were not used according to Toledano's concept, which he did not believe in. So this is Eliezer Toledano, who was the previous head of Southern Command, and when he assumed Southern Command, he did not pick up on any of these things, and he actually dismissed the idea that Hamas would attack. The division also mapped the possible infiltration points above the ground and issued airstrikes intended for the Air Force, and the command created a warning model for the Hamas plan, among other things. So under Aloni, they actually did take this seriously, the Jericho Wall plan, and didn't do anything, but Toledano took over, they didn't do anything. If there is an increase in the frequency and nature of Hamas training, an alert will be raised. Everything was abandoned. Hamas training did not raise an alert, and the Air Force improvised targets on the morning of October 7th. And as Unit 11741 has actually obtained, there were multiple units, certainly helicopters, that were actually given strike commands via WhatsApp from soldiers on the ground. So then Omri Maniv from Channel 12, who did an amazing job with this, he says, how unperturbed was Toledano by the possibility of invasion? Here's an incredible story. He wanted to allow the infantry battalions to go out for training. According to the findings of the Southern Command's operational investigation, the solution from Toledano's perspective was to replace an infantry battalion with a combat reconnaissance battalion that includes field observation fighters and the female observers in the company headquarters, even though then only 3 infantry battalions are spread over 59 kilometers. Division Commander Avi Rosenfeld refused and the move was canceled. Toledano denies that this happened. Obviously, if Omri Maniv is going to report it, there's pretty good evidence that this did happen. And basically, Toledano didn't even consider the threat to be real, so much so that he could take soldiers away to go on a training and not be worried about the border. Toledano was actually supposed to be the first to fear a Hamas invasion. He knows the scenario well from one of the dramatic nights on the Gaza border between May 9th and 10th, 2021, the night before Guardian of the Walls, which was first revealed here. This is what it looks like then. At 9 o'clock p.m., there was a telltale sign. Israel had learned that SIMs were activated on the phones of Hamas terrorists in the northern strip. This is back in 2021. As we know, in 2023, this did happen on October 7th, and that's what prompted the phone call between members of the defense establishment. Division Commander Aloni calls Commander Toledano. Toledano replies, follow up, we'll talk in the morning. At 11 o'clock p.m., Hamas is unchanging the nature of the media. Aloni again calls Toledano. The answer is similar. Follow up, we'll talk in the morning. At 1 o'clock a.m., an unusual report of underground activity is received. Aloni conducts a situational assessment in the division. He wakes up Toledano, but this time the answer is the same. Follow up, we'll talk in the morning. But Aloni is not calm. He orders the division on high alert and sends hundreds of soldiers out to the field. At 3 a.m., this is now going to be into the next, back in 2021, a fourth telltale sign, a conversation is recorded between 2 elements of Hamas military's wing in the northern Gaza Strip. Aloni wakes up Toledano again and warns 4 signs indicate a raid. This time, Toledano accepts his position and calls the general staff, leads the discussion, brings a number of senior officials on the line, including the head of operations division at the time, Yaron Finkelman. Now, this is relevant because Yaron Finkelman was on the phone calls the morning of October 7th, and he was on vacation in the north and actually made a decision to go to the Kiryat and see what was going on in Tel Aviv. But he did not call down, as far as we know, to any of the bases to tell them to be on high alert. He was just going to go check things out in the Kiryat and see what happened. It says the Ramat Kal before Aviv Kochavi is on the line. He says the sequester order is executed. The order to prepare for the raid, which includes, among other things, planes in the air, bombs, and a massive reinforcement of forces, which was not done on October 7th. In the morning, there's no raid. So perhaps because Israel actually activated everyone, Hamas did not go out and invade Israel. But in the afternoon, there's a shooting in Jerusalem, and the Operation Guardian the Wall began. The next night, terrorists are discovered preparing to raid via an attack tunnel in Khan Yunis. They're eliminated from the air. Then it turns out that it was a much broader plan, but Sinwar did not authorize it back in 2021. Now, is this related to IDF's preparations at the border? Possibly, but we don't know. But essentially, in 2021, when similar signs were detected, the IDF activated and took it seriously, despite Toledano wanting to be in bed and asleep, and perhaps prevented a huge national tragedy. That, of course, did not happen on October 7th. Not only were the lessons of that night not learned by the IDF leadership, nor were the lessons of Operation Guarding the Walls as a whole. We did not hear much criticism of the implementation of the quote-unquote Metro Plan, which is letting Hamas build tunnels funded by Qatar. It was also one of the series of operational investigations that were carried out at the end of the war, and Brigadier General Dr. Meir Finkel was entrusted with it. Brigadier General Finkel's investigation states that there were many failures in the execution of the Metro Plan, contrary to the narrative of Aviv Kochavi and Eliezer Toledano. A week later, Kochavi organizes a huge conference where the various investigations of the operation are presented, except that the investigation into the safety, security, and how wise it is to have the metro, to allow the metro to be built, was absent from the event, and it was shelved and has not been presented up until today. We know Aviv Kochavi has been in America fundraising, speaking at a number of different groups and organizations. He just joined an investment firm that's based in Canada. He has been of no help in trying to help with equipment. As far as we know, when Unit 11741 approached Aviv Kochavi via back channel, he essentially ran away and had nothing to do with us, wouldn't help try to make the situation better. And as we see here, he's trying to avoid responsibility or conversation about it. Of course, the wall was built and entrusted under his command, and the whole concept. And it's going to be very important that the people that actually were in charge of these plans answer these questions and answer them for the country, and specifically the soldiers that fell that day, the ones who were on the wall and had no clue that this was about to happen or that they should have even been ready. Speaking with a family who lost a son on the border, and they had absolutely no idea beforehand that many people were sleeping, and if only they'd been given a 10 or 15-minute warning, things would be a lot different. And the question is why, when the head generals spoke, Herzl Levy, Ron Finkelman, Khaliva, Ronan Bar, how come they didn't call down to the local bases and make sure that they were also on alert to some extent? And it would have made a huge difference. And unfortunately, just didn't happen. And again, I want to highlight something which I've said on Instagram and other channels, but these families have to see the same leaders advancing and being celebrated within the IDF right now, and it's extremely difficult. And the accountability might be there verbally, but in action it's not really there. And verbally it's there only sometimes. Imagine a doctor commits malpractice and the patient dies, and the family wants to investigate, and the doctor replies that they have 7 more surgeries that week, so they can't really take time to investigate it, but when they get around to it, they'll let them know, and they're going to do their own investigation. I doubt anybody would be happy with that. And same goes for these families. They've been through so much, and they deserve to have answers. They deserve to know why this happened and what could have been done differently. And for the future of the state of Israel and of the Jewish people, it's imperative that answers are delivered, and they're delivered in a timely and thorough fashion so that better security procedures can be implemented. And it's not something that can be taken lightly. It has to be demanded from citizens of Israel and from world Jewry, because the security of world Jewry is tied in with the state of Israel. And it's imperative that we learn and actually make real changes, even if it costs a few people their job. It's very, very important that we get the real change, and it's long overdue. I know obviously Israel's executing a war, but at this point, it certainly can be done. The investigation could happen, could be published. There are lessons that can be learned. And just the other week, they said that now they're going to give the lookout women guns, but there's still many other people who do not have the proper equipment. And these investigations need to be very, very thorough and demand real answers. So that's what I have for right now, and I appreciate you tuning in. And if you have any other questions, comments, drop them below. And I'm here as always to have a conversation. Thank you.